Hi, everyone. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that this episode touches on some of the ways we cope with life's challenges, including substance use. Take care of yourself as you listen. I'm Julio Alvarez, tech leader turned executive coach, and this is Braving Big Tech, a 5-part series about the highs, lows, and pivotal moments of my 15-year career, and what led me to the mission I am on now, empowering you with the courage to lead from your heart. My hope is that you see some of yourself in this story and use it so that together we can slow down, redefine our failures, and bring humanity back into leadership. This is part 3, Tumblr, Counterfeit Connection.
Like, you would walk into my apartment and we'd joke, we'd laugh, and then you get on your phone and suddenly your attention would be elsewhere. And I'd be like, that's just the sort of rhythm of our relationship at the moment.
While I was in your apartment on the couch grinding, I was hiding a truth from my best friend. I had just been rejected from a 4.5-year incredible career. I was afraid to even share that with you.
You were very good at hiding anything that was going wrong. You were very good at presenting a really good narrative about your career. I didn't know that you were having trouble at Google. I think it must have been really uncomfortable to think that you weren't succeeding as much as you wanted to.
Gosh, I just remember being on your couch thinking like, oh my God, like I'm never going to get another job because they're going to back channel and they're going to call somebody and somebody's going to find out and they're going to say bad things about me and I'm never going to get another job again and I'm never going to make that kind of money again and my life's going to be over. I think the worst of it is it was silent, it was secret. And that's something that I want people to learn from this, that shame needs silence, secrecy, and judgment to grow. And if we can't share our struggles even with our best friends, then who the hell are we sharing it with? We can't hold the weight of that forever. We have to be in connection with another human being to process it and move through it. I was staying with my friend Beau Gordon for a couple of months while I looked for an apartment and a new job in New York. I got to the offer stage with Twitter, but a hiring freeze caused the offer to be pulled at the last minute. And even though it wasn't personal, it was a shock and a big disappointment. Here I was thinking I could swing seamlessly from one tree branch to the next, but I missed. The rejection was really starting to wear on me. First by my dad, then Apple, Google, and now Twitter. Eventually, the offers came in, including one from Tumblr, which had the best pay, the nicest office, and seemed the most chill. But I was hesitant. Social media was a very different business, and Tumblr wasn't exactly on the up and up. It was late 2015, and as one of the first social media platforms, they got comfortable and innovation slowed. This allowed newer products like Instagram and Vine to swoop in and take market share. I knew it would be a downshift from Google, but I was in survival mode. I needed safety, security, and a way to quickly redeem myself from the string of setbacks. Tumblr had just been acquired by Yahoo, and my job was to help ensure the success of that integration. The mission? Level up Tumblr's product marketing launches by focusing on fewer but bigger features that power users cared about most. Essentially, can you use the lessons you learned at the tech giants to create more impact here at Tumblr? Cool, let's go. Sign me up. At first, it was a nice change of pace. The culture was low-key, and everything was smaller scale compared to Google. 150 employees versus Google's 11,000. $10,000 budgets versus 10 million. With fewer stakeholders and less complexity, I didn't feel like I had to be on point 100% of the time. Coming from Google, I was a big fish in a small pond now, and I ate up that validation. But it didn't take long to figure out what was really going on under the hood. You see, before the acquisition, Tumblr was a small startup of cool, trendy creatives. They didn't have huge teams and airtight strategies or formal procedures like Google did. Yahoo came in pushing for a more corporate approach, and naturally, some OG Tumblr employees pushed back, creating tension between the two companies. During a reorg, Don Steele became my second manager at Tumblr. He was kind, funny, and had such a warm presence.
I think one of the things that made Tumblr so successful in its growth era was that there was a tremendous sense of community within the employee culture, that everyone felt that they had ownership of what was happening and that they were part of a team. And I think there was a feeling of like a bit of a pirate ship versus the Facebooks and Twitters and Foursquares and other social media spaces of the world, where it was like we could do our own thing and, dance to the beat of a different drummer. Whereas a place like Comedy Central and other places in my career, you have years of institutional knowledge and processes and procedures that are grandfathered in that don't exist in the same place that they did at Tumblr. One of the things at Tumblr that was a real part of the DNA of the company was every Friday there were those all hands. They were almost like a Grateful Dead concert, and you never knew what was going to happen. And sometimes they were like in a bucket, and sometimes they were way out there. And sometimes they were 20 minutes, and sometimes they were, an hour and 45, and it could have just been one question. We were part of the group that kind of were hired immediately after the acquisition. And there was a desire/mandate from Yahoo for growth and monetization. It was tricky because obviously Tumblr had grown to a certain point. A couple of people had made a lot of money. A couple of people had been part of a fun success, and we got to throw wild parties and stuff. And then it was a little bit of like, here's Yahoo, and eventually we have to start making money. And what are we going to do about that?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I remember it. And I remember feeling like, okay, we got to get our stuff together. Like, I get you want to do April Fools, but all the resources shouldn't be on April Fools. We have bigger fish to fry. Let's put in systems in place.
There was nothing that you did, but in terms of how you were marketed to other people, is like, oh, we're bringing in a guy who did this at Google. We're bringing in a guy who did some of this at Apple. And it's just like, you look at some of the people who had been in like the art department thinking, well,
yeah,
now the pirate ship is being taken over by, Carnival Cruises, and there are people who are coming in, and I was fortunate.
We're putting in slides.
Yeah, we're going to put in slides, and we're going to leave on time for once. And we might not prioritize April Fool over the relaunch of an iOS.
Yeah.
Your resume intimidated a lot of people there.
That's a pattern that it's emerging from these conversations. Like, you could come across as intimidating because you had a lot of energy. You had a lot of horsepower. One friend at Google called me a gay tornado. Like, you were kind of like, not that it was a bad thing, but you were like, you were not messing around.
Well, I think a lot of it, as a compliment to you, it's you're confident in who you are, and you wanted to demonstrate confidence and competence, and that you were being brought on to do something that you were going to be good at. I remember pretty vividly, you came in with being very confident and aggressive and wanting to do a lot of things and change procedures and implement new processes. And no one had the experience that you did to say that was a bad idea of a process or that was a good idea. I certainly remember there were some times where the existing procedures and who was doing what and what they were doing and why they were doing it didn't align with what you felt. I remember there was some tension between your sensibility and other people's sensibilities. So when you would put a request in for the art department for some designs for things, and it would come back in a different vibe than, a very clean thing that you'd get from Apple.
Yeah.
I also remember that you were a very strong advocate for yourself and wanting to make sure that your voice was heard. And, you would organize meetings other people weren't organizing and were trying to get done through Slack or whatever. And so it was a little bit of more professionalism, which some people didn't react well to. There are probably organizations where that would have been a little bit better than Tumblr, where if they didn't have pork sandwiches for lunch every third Tuesday, there was a riot in Slack.
With the company in transition, It was hard to launch big features and move forward on high-stakes decisions. Because of this, I wasn't as engaged in my work as I was at Google, and I definitely wasn't going at the same pace. Even though I tried to move on with this new role, the shock of what had happened at Google still lingered. Everything felt tainted by this job loss that didn't make any sense to me. I didn't talk to my friends or family about it. I didn't go to therapy. I just kept it all buried inside. I was ashamed and stuck in my thoughts. So I started distracting myself with things that numbed the pain and brought me temporary relief. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Actually, it was more like a whole lot of techno. I'd message guys on Grindr and entice them with dick pics, sometimes even during work breaks. It became this game of how can I optimize and get as many guys as possible. But underneath that was the real reason, a desperate attempt to feel more worthy, to feel better about myself. I spent a lot of time with Beau and our group of friends. We'd hit the gym together, meet at someone's house to pregame, and party all night. We'd often do weekend getaways to Fire Island, but we'd party on weeknights too, and then drag ourselves to work the next morning. I used to define myself by this kind of extremism. It's all or nothing, baby. That's what I used to say. But the truth is, it was an excuse to stay stuck. Because if I just kept going through the motions, I wouldn't have to stop and reflect or take responsibility for what was actually going on in my life. It was exhausting and unsustainable. You know, I thought I had community and connection in this friend group, but in hindsight, much of that was counterfeit connection. Many of us were in pain, but we weren't talking about it. We were just numbing out, there but not really there. And let's be real, you can't build deep, meaningful connection on that foundation.
I think when we lived in New York, it was work hard, play hard. Like we'd go out every night. I mean, we were in our 20s, we were full of cum.
Yeah. I swear, to this day, it is hard for me to walk into a bar in New York City and not see somebody that I have hooked up with. And I'm like, motherfucker, Julio, you really got around, man. I was fucking every Tom, Dick, and Harry I could find. Oh my gosh. But I'm owning that. I realize now that I was just trying to fill a hole. I was trying to fill a void. I was trying to protect myself and numb and soothe. I felt like, oh my God, if some guy some hot guy had sex with me, I'm good enough. See, at least this person still thinks I'm good enough, even though Google didn't.
Yeah, you're really good at numbing. And that's why your transformation has been so surprising to me. You went from hiding all of the pain that you experienced to being really vulnerable about it. And you went from numbing all the time, like always being on your phone or hooking up, to being this sort of like Zen Buddha creature that you are now. So I'm proud of you for making that huge shift. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think it's just everybody's doing different things with their pain. And what I'm trying to do is to awaken the next generation of leaders to the pain that lives within them that they are hiding and numbing and suppressing, because that will catch up to you. One night after a frustrating day at work, I messaged a guy on Grindr who lived near me in the West Village. When I walked into this beautiful brownstone, I thought, wow, this guy's got to be loaded. We started spending more time together, take-out dinners, long talks browsing the Christie's catalog and shooting the shit about his life and career. He was worth over $100 million with everything you could ask for. Yet here he was hanging out with me via Grindr. When I asked him why, he said, because you seem genuinely interested in me in a world where people are always asking me for things. He said, I can't even go to the gym without someone asking for a discount on a product of mine. He shared stories about how in his younger days, he'd have a stimulant in one pocket and a depressant in the other. Up and down on intoxicants all day long just to stay on top amidst the pressure. After several weeks of getting to know him, I was reminded of a valuable lesson. We all struggle, even the rich and the successful. Money might buy comfort, but it sure doesn't buy happiness. You can have all the material possessions in the world and still feel empty and broke inside. At one of our parties, I went up to the roof to get some air after having just taken a whole lot of party drugs. A colossal wave of euphoria came over me, and it was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was this tingly rush of pleasure that filled every part of my body. And in that moment, I was no longer weighed down by any of life's disappointments. I felt like I was floating on a cloud, even if just for a few hours. But come on, I knew this couldn't be good. You see, my cousin died suddenly of a drug overdose in 2008, so I know how this story ends. But I was desperate for an escape and willing to ignore my gut. I rationalized it, thinking, well, if this successful guy does it, then it must not be that big of a deal. My mom was still on Long Island, but I kept my distance because I didn't like her husband. I'd stop by occasionally, using their place as a hub between the city and Fire Island. I found a picture of me from one of those trips, and I'll never forget it because my mom told me I was getting too skinny. Well, that's what happens when you're working out, barely eating, and partying hard on cocaine, okay? Every time I moved or changed jobs, she'd be there to support me, but I never told her what was really going on. It's wild to think about, because now I tell her everything. But I should have known, this woman cannot be fooled.
During that time, I thought you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing. But I did not say it.
Yeah, you didn't.
I just held it. And I just observed, and I just always tried to make sure you knew that I was available at any given moment, because I knew you were up to no good. And I was like, I'm just going to throw it out there. Listen, I don't care what time of the night. You need me, call me. And you have on 2 occasions that I can clearly remember. One of them made me very scared, but I also was very angry with you. So you call me up and you sound like you've been drugged. And I've got this idiot husband. God forgive me for saying that. And so I'm like, all right, I need you to take a ride with me to the city. We arrive and you don't look right. Now, the first thing I do is I'm sizing you up. I'm noticing that you're losing weight. You're thin. I asked you questions. They didn't add up. And so you got in the car and you were like lifeless. You told me you were sick, but I never witnessed that sickness before. So now I'm scared. And then I'm so mad. I'm cursing. Son of a bitch, I knew something was wrong. I knew I should have did something last night,
Right.
And so I said, yeah. And I hit the brake and you went rolling right off the back seat onto the floor. And she goes, that wasn't nice. And I said, shut the fuck up or you're next. I mean, we're laughing at it now, but that was a terrible thing to do. Gosh. You came to the house. I said, I'm going to take you to the ER, but you didn't want to go. So I was like, all right, here's the deal. 24 hours. You look better in 24 hours. We're golden. Because you didn't look horrible. You just looked like you were coming out of a mess.
Something, yeah. And then the Fire Island was the second time.
Oh, my Lord. The second time, yes. The Fire Island was scary.
I went to some beach house. You go to a party and then an older guy lures you in, and then you go to their house and you're like, wow, they have all this money and this fancy pool and da-da-da-da. And they're like, here, take these drugs. And there was ketamine or some shit. There was some pill that I was just like, okay. And then I just started to trip out and I was like, I need to leave. I need to get out of here. And I just remember distinctly, it was like another hit was just, I don't want to feel anything.
See, you can't sustain on, I don't want to feel, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to feel. In order to be human and to navigate this world in which we live, we must feel. Because the emotion is what's going to keep us propelling forward.
And that's it. I think that that's also uniquely the thing in this AI world is our understanding of emotional intelligence. Soft skills are real skills. They're the skills. I understand why addiction expert Dr. Gabor Mate says, ask not why the addiction, but why the pain. You see, addiction is simply an attempt to solve a painful problem. I have so much empathy for people struggling with addiction because I know how seductive that euphoric relief can be. And keep in mind, addiction can take many forms, okay? Not just drugs, but also work, food, shopping, sex, gambling. There's a difference between enjoying something and using it in excess as a way to cope. But that difference isn't always easy to see when we are stuck in our head and disconnected from our hearts. There's an opportunity here to get curious. What is the real motivation behind the behavior? For me, I filled my schedule with events every night of the week, always going, because I knew that if I slowed down, the thoughts and feelings, they would be too painful to deal with. That's why at one point I was spending upwards of 6 hours a day on Grindr, hooking up in search of connection. I wanted to find validation, and I knew I could do it through this app. This distracting and pleasure-seeking, it was a form of armor that I used to distance myself from the hurt. But underneath it all, I was shackled to my shame, hiding my secrets, and abused by my inner critic. I could only bottle up my pain and anger for so long until I started discharging it onto people and circumstances around me, especially at work. I was losing my team player energy and collaborative spirit. If you pushed my buttons, I'd quickly turn into the Hulk, becoming short-tempered and argumentative, always ready for a fight. I couldn't hold space for others to feel seen or heard because I couldn't even offer that compassion to myself. I thought I was this hotshot who came from Google, but this entitlement was just a projection of my own insecurities. After all, I had just been fired from Google. Dr. Brené Brown said, we judge people in areas where we're vulnerable to shame. We're hard on each other because we're using each other as a launching pad out of our own perceived deficiency. And wow, that is exactly what I did. I projected my own self-judgment onto colleagues who pushed my buttons. If they weren't on their game, and if they didn't meet my high expectations, I'd think, why are you even here? But that was my self-talk. We're all working our shit out on each other, and most of the time, we don't even realize it. If you look closely, you'll see it everywhere. Not surprisingly, I was put on another performance plan, but I felt like this was more of a well-intentioned pip. Don genuinely tried to coach me through it. He encouraged me to pay attention to my tone and body language and taught me exercises like 20 reasons. So when something happens, you come up with 20 possible reasons for why it happened. It's meant to disrupt our brain's tendency to latch onto one perspective and remind you that you may not have the whole story. And oftentimes, I didn't have the whole story. I wanted to hear Don, I really did, but I couldn't because the armor around my heart was too heavy. I just figured if this was anything like Google, I was on my way out. I was stuck in a constant stress response, easily triggered and always on the defensive. I made so many quick decisions based on the first thought in my head, constantly bracing for the worst case scenario. Metaphorically, I was bleeding and trying to hide it wearing white clothes. Don wasn't the typical Patagonia vest-wearing tech bro, as Scott Galloway likes to say. He had a softer, more human side, which in some ways felt threatening. I was afraid for him to see the real me, especially as I was feeling more and more out of alignment with myself. But by avoiding vulnerability, discomfort, and uncertainty, and by pushing back against constructive criticism, I was self-sabotaging. When the underlying belief is I am not enough, we often undermine our own success. Why? Because we don't think we deserve it. So what do? We overcompensate with overwork, or we underperform in fear of failure. Behaviors that feel self-protective, but can end up being self-destructive. And that's what happened to me.
Another mentor taught me was that you should try and act a little bit like a duck in the workplace, where on the surface, you doesn't appear as if you're working that hard and you're working really hard below. And I think you were a person where it became very clear from the outside that you were really working hard to accomplish things. And sometimes the visibility of that hard work, calling a meeting, sending a massive email, sending an email at 2 a.m, these types of things that become very physical manifestations of demonstrating that you're working really hard. It became clear that some of the hard work was because of frustration. You were getting frustrated with people. You were wearing it on your sleeve.
Yes.
Like I remember a specific thing where there was copy being written about one of the blog posts that would happen on the site, and there was copy written, and you wrote some things in there that were, I think at one point you said, this is immature language. You were not an English, I don't think you were an English major. So it was kind of like the language you were using kind of was offensive. And so it just kind of became a thing of, again, some of these things about tone in Slack. I remind people all the time, like, be careful what you say in these things because of the tone. And
yes, it matters. I didn't know how to be kind always. And I didn't know how to be kind always because in my culture and my family, the way that you communicated the severity of something was the degree and the snarkiness, the intensity. It's like, how many fucking times do I have to tell you to clean your shit up? And it's like, I would get frustrated and I would bring that energy. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, who are you? What the hell is going on here? Like, can you just be kind a little bit? And that's something I really had to work on. I really have worked on a lot.
It's a little thing, but like, I always remember you were an early bird. And then it was like, oh, Julio's not getting into 10:45 now. And it's like the body language of like, I'm going to go to the gym in the afternoon for a little bit longer than you. Like, just little things start to add up where, where are you? And like, if you remember, there were 4 floors, I think.
Yeah.
And, oh, I was working on 9. I guess so. I trust you.
I was like, wow, he's trying to trust me. Like he wants to give me the benefit of the doubt here.
Right.
He doesn't want to do this. He wants to give me the benefit of the doubt. But now I'm fucking pissed and I'm frustrated. And because of the adoption, it's like I didn't feel this. I felt alone, even though you were managing me. I felt like this is a lost cause. But I did feel the reach for like, come on, like I'm trying to make this work for you, man. I think I even remember you telling me like, this is not easy for me.
It's not easy because having adopted you in the organization, there was already a little bit of a 1.5 strikes against you. I would have hoped, had I been your manager for much longer in the process and from the start, that we could have worked it out. The second thing is that great HR people will say, this PIP can be the best thing for you because we're now investing the time to help you. I remember in my experience when I was at Viacom, I had a career coach and a 360. The person explained to me, is like, just come at this open-hearted and how can it help you? And you're going to hear some things about yourself that are not easy to hear. So just like, how do you take criticism? And so it became clear we wanted to make some changes to help you and help other departments work with you. And so we kind of came up with things that were achievable and realistic and in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
And it was, these are the 3 things that we need to get done in the next month or it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And what was your experience about how I handled it?
You embraced it for the first like week and a half. And then some of the bad habits of getting really upset and ruffled by things. And it just came back and it became kind of clear that, you were making your own decision, that you were not going to, that you had made up your mind that you were looking to leave anyway. And whether that was in, you were already interviewing at places or how you were acting, you kind of accepted defeat.
Yeah.
And maybe the organization didn't give you as many tools as they should have, or maybe the integrity of the PIP was not 100% there because you weren't being set up. But, I remember there were some definite things we wanted you to work on and do in a timely fashion. And there was one deliverable of like, get a brief by this time, and you didn't do it. And it was like, I never thought these things were valuable. It's like, well, these are things we're trying to get done to achieve. And you, by not doing it, it escalated because you're not the owner of it. You're not invested in the success of it. And then it becomes, well, this is one of the things we specifically talked about. And again, it wasn't as if we were asking you to change the user interface to something more streamlined and you got to learn how to code. It was, let's make sure we can talk about these things in a professional fashion, and let's not be, let's be constructive in here. And again, there probably comes a point where you just don't embrace those. And maybe I didn't know about your Google experience, and maybe it was like a flashback to some of that.
I think it was. I received it as a battle, as a bomb being thrown at me. Mm-hmm. And so then I just shut off. I said, now I'm not doing anything. Now I'm not doing any briefs.
Yep.
And it wasn't that I didn't have the ability to do the brief. It was that I was in, the fight or flight or freeze mode. And I was just like, eject. And it's the same thing that happened to me at Google. It didn't go well. And then I froze and I was like, okay, I'm accepting defeat, eject. Like my option is not to do the work to try and stay and learn and use this as a moment of grace and opportunity to grow with people who are going out of their way to try and help me. It's, get out of here, escape to the next thing. The work to do is to recognize it is okay to feel frustrated as a leader. It is not okay to discharge that in disrespectful ways to the team, especially when it's not moving the needle. It's just, you're creating more toxicity, and then it's a race to the bottom of the brain. It doesn't work. It's like, oh my God, I am self-sabotaging. I have literally recreated the very thing I'm trying to avoid.
Right.
And then I got myself in a hole. And then I'm like, now Don is against me. And then I thought, of all the guys, he's the nice one. He's the father of Tumblr. And now now he has to give me this pip. Now I'm really up shit's creek. So now fuck it. Like, they don't listen to me, fuck them. And I look back at that and think, okay, what I really needed was to regulate, to understand like what's really going on here. Why are the defense mechanisms coming on? And I realized I had all this unprocessed pain that was showing up and literally paralyzing me from doing a good job, offering my gifts. And so all of the moments where you were trying to speak to me, you were trying to coach me, you were trying to give me advice, you were trying to guide me, I wasn't listening. I was here, but I wasn't really here. And so that's what I'm trying to get people to do is pay attention. If you're getting frustrated and your manager's sitting you down and trying to give you guidance, there's something there.
I mean, it's brave of you to have these thoughts and to kind of have come to the other side of this, as opposed to, I'm not in the dartboard behind you with the picture, and today I throw the darts at Don day.
Yeah, and that's easy. It's easy to stay in the anger. It's easy to be in that space because you can control, and it's cheap almost. It's like it's much harder to stop and turn towards it and have this conversation, which is why I think this is going to be so special, and I hope that it helps a lot of people. I was looking forward to this conversation with Don, but I was nervous. There's no doubt about that. When I told people, they were surprised. Wait, you're going to talk to the manager that fired you? Wow, that takes guts. Even though Don had to put me on a PIP and eventually let me go, we found it in our hearts to have an open, honest conversation about what really happened. It wasn't easy. It was vulnerable and uncomfortable. But it was also healing. It left me hopeful that you too might feel the power of vulnerability and reconciliation. Because when we're willing to look back on past events with curiosity and compassion and clarity, and we can take responsibility for our role in those events, then we can create opportunities for different choices and second chances going forward. But without that awareness, what happens? We stay stuck. And that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't take the time to process or reflect, so I kept missing the lesson. I kept charging down the same path, making the same mistakes, wondering why things weren't changing. The lessons were there all along, but I wasn't ready to see them. So, in just under a year, I lost my job at Tumblr. In the next episode, I'll take you to San Francisco for my rock bottom.
I remember being so angry over stuff that I would just open my bag and pop an Adderall and then write a nasty email.
And ironically, we were reading Brene Brown's The Power of Vulnerability at the time. Like, everyone was talking about vulnerability. We had no idea how to do it.
Braving Big Tech was written and hosted by me, Julio Alvarez. It was produced and edited by Rikki Gunton, and our theme song is Breaking Out by Nick Deutsch, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. A special thank you to the 15 leaders brave enough to get on the mic with me for this series. And hey, let's stay connected. You can find me at letsgowithjulio.com. And if listening to this brings up something for you, I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a note at hello@letsgowithjulio.com.